The melancholy version here, kind of bittersweet, for Speak Up. My name is Kirkpatrick, and for the last 11 years, believe it or not, we've been here every month with the Fiscal Court answering your questions that you either called in or later on texted in. Those numbers are on the screen here for you. The court is all here to say goodbye to you tonight because this will be our final show after 11 successful years, and really we were #1 in our time slot on this channel for 11 years in a row. And not only introduced, but I want to thank Judge Al Mattingly.
Thank you, Kirk. It's been a pleasure. It's nice to be here tonight, and I just always have wanted to start the show by saying you're full of it.
Thank you very much, Judge. And our commissioners, Charlie Castlin.
Kirk, good evening. And I want to, before you move on to them, I just want to thank you. You've been a part of this longer than any of us. So
well,
thank you for your.
You know, I'll talk a little bit about that at the end because it really has been very educational for me and very interesting as well. We have Commissioner George Wathen.
I just want to mention, I looked it up and there was a 6-month period of time we were not #1 in this time.
I don't, maybe that was UK basketball that night or something. Commissioner Mike Coger. Mike, nice to have you here.
I think that's when I first got elected that they just dropped 6 months there.
They have.
And I might tell everyone that's watching tonight, we do not have TV, so we can't see us, but I can tell you who the ugliest one is sitting here.
Well, a couple of things. In all seriousness, one of our team members and the crew here at OCTC has been great. John Bryant and his team for the last 11 years has put up with us and made sure everything went smoothly. And one of our cameramen, Don Braun, is no longer with us, hasn't been for several months. He's suffering from a very crippling disease. We want to say hi to Don.
Hey, Don. Everybody wave at him. Hey, Don.
We want to thank you for all the work in making us look better than we actually do behind the camera. So thank you, Don.
He had to work especially hard on Commissioner Wathen and Commissioner Coger.
It was tough.
Kirk,
go ahead.
The First Lady is sitting out here. She's celebrating a very significant milestone in her life, and she's celebrating it sitting here with us.
She is, and again, you know, just take the script and run the show, Judge, because I'm
47 blissful years married to me.
Judy and Judge Mattingly have been married 47 years today. Yes. So instead of celebrating, they're postponing until after the show, just so that he could be here with you. And Judy's in our studio audience with like 200 or 300 people.
Can you get a picture of her over there, Mr. Cameraman?
No, can't do that. She doesn't want that.
She threatened him.
We do want to answer your questions. We want to do a little reflection too. But this was a newspaper article, the very first show that we did. They ran a front page on the region section that Fiscal Court is going to be on a live TV show where they're going to answer your questions. And it really was groundbreaking at the time. I think we all have to salute Reed Hare, who was our county judge at the time, and especially Commissioner Bruce Coonsey. Commissioner Coonsey at the time thought it would be a good idea to be able to take a little time and answer those questions. And you know, I know at the Fiscal Court meetings, they're very structured, and it's difficult to discuss real issues. You can make a statement, but it's somewhat intimidating, and I think this is a great idea.
I think it's threatening. People are not very comfortable coming out of their environment, their home, and coming to Fiscal Court and standing in front of an audience at a podium and asking a question of 4 folks that they're not really sure whether they're friend or foe. And I thought that this program provided that anonymity that kind of you get on Facebook, where you can sit in the comfort of your home and call in or text. And I'm really disappointed at the Time Warner, the other, what was the Spectrum merger, because you know, if it wasn't for them withdrawing their support of public television, if it wasn't for them withdrawing their support to schools and to local governments and things like that, we would still be able to do this show. But because of the attitude that they've taken, and it really distresses me that they are doing this, then this show is closing down. I don't know if you've been on channels 72, 73, and 74, which are public education channels. They have withdrawn their program.
Right. As part of the, when cable television first began back in Owensboro Cablevision days and all through Time Warner, part of the agreement with the city and the county, if you're going to have a franchise here, you had to offer at least 4 stations, one for each of for the 2 governments and for the schools.
Right.
And they also were supposed to offer free time for individuals to make
But
all
since
that's
the
gone.
merger, since the merger, it has been extremely difficult
Right.
working with them. And again, I, for one, am extremely disappointed at the outcome of that merger.
Well, that aside,
That's my own personal
that's
opinion.
okay. That's an editorial there. That's fine. You know, over the last 11 years, I think, and I've got some thoughts I'll save till the end of the program, but I'm very interested where 10 or 11 years ago when we started this, none of you were on the court, of course, and you were
on
the city commission.
I was a city commission. I was the mayor pro tem.
And Commissioner Castlin, were you also on city commission at that time?
If he was on, if
He
he
was
was mayor
off.
pro tem, that was my 2-year
Yeah.
absence.
You
He
were.
was off.
So take us back to 2007. The big hot topic, I mean, in this newspaper article, it was all about merger and safety. And OCTC, the college itself, was a dream. You know,
Well,
you think about
or Phase 2 was
Phase
a dream.
2,
Phase 2
right.
was a dream. If you think back in 2007, and it's amazing that it hasn't it popped up in 2010 when we were running for Davis County Fiscal Court. But merger, at that time, there had been a group that was appointed to study merger.
Right.
Came back, there was no action taken. The biggest thing that I remember was we the people. We had a huge meeting of folks at then the premier place in the West, the Executive Inn, and they talked about all the things that were foremost and uppermost in their minds. And out of that meeting, some of the downtown plans or the planning started. It was the city at that time when Mayor Watson was in his last 2 years. I was serving 2 years as mayor pro tem. And we were really looking into the future. I remember we had just appointed Bill Parrish as city manager. We were looking into the future, what was going to happen. And we started a reduction in personnel, trying to save money in anticipation. We had already been told back then that pension costs were going to continue to escalate. And then for some reason, the General Assembly didn't do the job that we elected them to do, and they kind of let things go for a while. We were on the cusp of greatness in this community, and I think if looking back, if you took a stroll through downtown today and compared it to a stroll through downtown 11 years ago, you wouldn't recognize the downtown. And the same thing out in the rural areas of the county, the expansion of subdivisions and businesses and those kinds of things. And we have solved a lot of issues, if not solved, mitigated the flooding issue in this community, transportation issues in this community. So we've had 11 years of what I think has been very sound local government, and I really look forward to the future. I think we'll have some more of the same.
Well, it's really been an incredible decade. If you think back,
has.
there was no Smothers Park in 2007. Highway 54 had a Wendell's out there and
Right.
a couple of gas stations, and that's all changed too. George, you're a private businessman, as you are too, Mike. What do you see that's happened over the past 10 years that surprised you the most, and what of those, if any, enticed you to become a public servant?
I guess it's some of the things that Judge already alluded to. All the not only what the government has spent, the different local governments have spent in downtown Owensboro and in the area, but also how much the private sector has spent, and the investment in our community and the things that have happened. I'm excited about OCTC, what's going on out there. There's a lot of opportunity for young men and women to go there and move their careers along. So, but the biggest thing to me is the amount of investment with the private sector, and how they The government has changed the landscape, but the private sector has really done an outstanding job, big job.
Mike?
Giving back to the community, for me, has been a big involvement as a public servant. Back 11 years ago, the labor shortage wasn't there. It was plentiful. And I think that we should have looked a little bit deeper in some apprenticeship programs or something for skilled trades. Based on today, you just cannot find skilled tradesmen, you know, whether they're plumbers or carpenters. Every day, I hear complaints on no help out there. And it's sad, and they can't, you know, and a lot of was pushed was the college degrees, which was fine. A lot of people's not, you know, up to the college degree, and they didn't think much about a skilled trade, and nowadays they can go out and make, you know, $60,000 to $80,000 a year with very low investment.
And how fortunate we were to have fiscal court really spurred under Reed here and then through you all as well of supporting the community college. And that's a real focus of theirs is to be able to offer trade training as well as the first and second year.
I think the pendulum has swung back there in the 90s. The pendulum was swinging over to four-year college degrees. If you were going to go into the trades, you had to have an associate degree. And you know, there are a lot of folks, particularly those non-traditional students who are in their mid to late 20s. As a matter of fact, we have a neighbor who has a grandson that just got accepted into OCTC in the HVAC program. Well, you know, somehow the wires got crossed that said, well, you got to score X and Y on a math and an English test. Well, not to be in a skills trade, you don't, and we were able to work by that. But the point I'm making is a lot of those folks who are in their 20s and 30s and mid 30s don't want to go back and sit in a classroom with a bunch of 18 and 19-year-olds. Right. And they just feel that it's not a waste of time, but it's just a nowhere. So now we've got a venue, we've got a path that they can actually look and see how they can climb out of that dark abyss and take care of their families themselves and not have to depend on local governments and state governments and the federal government.
An opportunity
It's an
for
opportunity.
this training with
Yeah.
virtually a guaranteed job if
Oh,
you
absolutely.
can learn the trade.
Absolutely.
You know, you have a plumbing and heating business. How has that been impacted by the trades?
Well, I mean, it's always tough to find good, qualified, skilled folks, people, number one, who will show up at 8 o'clock and can pass a drug test. It's very tough. And then those people who will come in and actually perform above and beyond, they've got to believe that they're part of a team, because I'm just, and I don't want to equate being a HVAC serviceman to being a doctor, but that's what we do. Doctors diagnose and treat, and that's what our folks do, and you have to be able to communicate with people. So you can't just be deaf and dumb and sit there and not say any word. You have to be able to use a little deductive reasoning, and it's tough. Now, one thing that Mike talked about is there are folks out there, you can find them, you just have to pay them a heck of a lot more money than you used to, which means that you've got to pay a heck of a lot more money than you used to get things done at your home. But yeah, I've seen it since the early 90s.
But the opportunities are there now.
Oh, the opportunities are there. Yeah.
Well, I've got several topics I really want to get to. I'm going to go to Charlie Castlin. Served as a city commissioner, served now as county commissioner for 8 years, and always the man with the accounting background. Give us your view of the financial situation of both the city and the county, in your view.
Well, I think with the county's in far better shape than the city. We've not done the bonding and the spending that the city has. We did our part for the convention center with our insurance tax, and ours is looking very good, and we'll be able to roll that tax off earlier than what the bonds were scheduled to be. But we know the city's struggling at some level because their bond rating was downgraded slightly, not tremendously, but some, and ours hasn't been. We just got our revisited, and ours is strong. And I think that comes, at least from our perspective, all four of us are business owners, and we've got experience in the private sector to where we know that you can't go and spend. I mean, I readily tell my clients, my tax clients in particular, that debt's not your friend. You know, that ultimately during an economic downturn, debt will drown you or can drown you. And the person, the entity that's not swallowed up in debt is the one that will thrive during that, because you'll come out stronger. And I feel like that's where we are right now. I feel like we're in a very good position.
Well, fiscal court, is this the 8th year you
Eighth.
have not had a tax
Yes.
Correct.
increase? Now, taxes may have gone up a bit because of the appraisal of or
Valuation.
property.
Your tax bill would have gone up, but not as a result of fiscal court increasing their tax rate.
Right.
Yeah.
Another question that I had, back in 2008, fiscal court, along with the city too, they raised the tax on insurance premium. So if you had a $100,000 house, you were going to be paying an additional, I think it was 4%, on the premium that you paid for that insurance.
Right.
Now, that was to help pay for the downtown.
Right.
Two things about that I have a question. First of all, it's called a sunset tax. What does that mean?
So there's a sunset clause,
Clause, I
Kurt.
mean.
When the county passed, and it was actually 2009 when the county
Was.
bonded theirs, when rates were very low. The city actually didn't bond until about 3 years ago,
Right.
when rates were considerably higher.
Right.
The county, when they passed the 4% increase in insurance tax, and by the way, it's not a 4%, it's a 4.6, because the insurance company gets 0.15% for every percent that they collect from the state. So that's a little hidden
Didn't know
tidbit
that, yeah.
if you didn't know it. But anyway, the county passed their bond for a 20-year period with a sunset clause. It said, whenever the bond is paid off, or when we have accumulated enough tax in that fund, we will do away with the insurance tax. We think we're going to be able to do that 6 to 7 years early. As a matter of fact, I'm hoping my last year in this next term, that's the last thing that we will do. We will rescind the insurance tax on the county citizens. Now, the city passed theirs for 30 years, but there was no sunset clause, meaning when the bond's paid off or when they've accumulated enough funds to pay it off, that the tax will go away, not unless their city commission votes to remove it.
But it has to go away on the county.
On the county side, that's part of the
You
ordinance.
cannot,
It's law.
You can't say, well,
I
let's
can't
just
say-
move it over here.
I can't say
Okay.
that. No.
You know, I think the insurance tax, no one likes taxes, but what I liked about that is that everybody paid a fair share. To me, that made sense. If you own, or if you rent and, don't have a car or whatever, you don't pay much insurance for insurance premiums. And so you're paying very little. But if you have a yacht and $1 million home, you are paying more.
Right.
And another benefit is I'm retired, so I don't pay employment tax, or so it's spread out evenly among everyone. So I thought that was
Kurt,
good.
that's, you always hear about regressive tax. The sales tax is regressive, the occupational tax is, but all taxes are regressive, because all taxes take more of a percentage of that person's income
Right.
than it does from somebody else. So, you as one of those high income earners,
Yes.
because you pay the same rate as everybody else, but you pay a lot more in dollars.
Yes.
So it's not the same percentage of your income, but it's a lot more in dollars. So that's one of the things that you have to look at when you look at taxation and where do you place it. It's a philosophical argument all the time about where do you tax, how do you tax, what do you tax. So.
And where is that tax
Yeah.
money going?
Well, that's the
real
biggest
key.
thing. I've found that most people, when you can explain what that tax is going to be
They
used for and how they're going to benefit from it, they understand.
Yeah. If you just joined us,
Kirk,
this.
you can go ahead. I was just going to say that with regard to what the judge has said, we were talking earlier about how we've gone 8 years without raising property taxes. And we've also not raised the occupational
Right.
tax or the net profits tax on the county side. But one of the because of the 4% cap, that the point you just made about the insurance tax and how that's spread out perhaps more fairly than some of the other taxes. If we come to a point because of the pension that we have to raise the occupational tax, and that would be the easiest thing to do because that's not limited by the 4%. But people like yourself who are retired won't pay any of that additional tax.
And many that can afford it
Right.
and
Right.
would benefit from, well, I don't know about the whole benefit of the pension. That's where I was going to go. Just
But
quickly.
see, that's the thing I'm thinking, it's better to do it that way because people who are retired like Kirk can't take advantage of much of anything that the city or county offers because of the decrepit
That's I can barely get
situation.
around.
That's
You're
correct.
right. If you just joined us, this is Speak Up. This is a live two-way cable cast from OCTC, and after 11 years, this is our final show. We felt like a couple of things. A change in the way that the cable system is operated made it just very difficult to justify the time and effort and your tax money that produces this show.
But let me say this, Kirk, too, and you've heard me say, I thought this show was great because it afforded all the things we talked about. And it made this commission more open and transparent because we come before the general public every month and we're sitting here, ask us any question that you want and we're going to do our best to answer it. And I would tell you that in a discussion with some of my staff today, we're looking at ways, perhaps through a podcast, I don't know how we're going to do it, but we're going to continue to make ourselves available to that public.
In this venue,
In this
as opposed to just at fiscal
Right.
court, which is kind of intimidating. I mean,
Right.
I've been there, spoken in front, and it's meant to be, I think, to some degree.
We threw you out how many times?
You know, I'm not sure. But one topic that I really was hoping we'd get an answer to before the end of the show, but we're not going to, are the herd of elephants in the room, which is the state pension.
Yeah.
And, you know, we're talking about huge amount of money, huge.
Originally, it was $1.6 million to the county and almost $3 million to the city.
A year,
A year.
the first year.
Now, the governor and the General Assembly put a 12% collar on what we were going to pay, which meant the city was going to have to pay roughly $750,000 additional each year, cumulative until they reached the $3 million.
$750,000 then
Yeah, and
one- and then
1.5, then 2.25, yeah, 2.25. The county $350, then $700. The county can manage it right now in that way until we get to the 1.3, and then quite frankly, folks, we're going to be looking at some kind of a tax increase. Don't know when, but we're going to have to
The
look
numbers
at some,
don't lie.
because right now this commission did a really great job in creating equilibrium between our income and our expenditures. So every year, that's what we looked at. So we got this much extra income this year because of an increase in the property value, so we get a little extra tax, and our expenses kind of balance. But when that equilibrium ceases to be and your expenses are here, we've got, by law, we have to balance that budget somehow. And so anyway, I'm hoping, you know, the Attorney General sued the governor and the General Assembly and said that what they did was wrong, and the governor says that if that suit prevails, then we're going to owe the entire 1.6 million, and the city will owe the entire 3 million. And in a speech last Wednesday at a luncheon, he said there were only 6 or 7 counties who could afford that for a while, and we were one of them. But many counties and many smaller cities will declare bankruptcy. There's no way
so
that
everybody
they can,
loses
yes,
there.
Yes.
And the governor's coming tomorrow. by the
Tomorrow at
way. Will you
11.
talk to him about
Tomorrow
that?
11 a.m. at Brescia
Brescia?
College. Yes.
Yeah, good. One thing I never get around to, it's always my emergency backup question, and I've decided to do it, is how can citizens like you become involved in the fiscal court and in our community through fiscal court? You don't want to run for office, maybe. You don't want to become politically active. But what is important is that the fiscal court actually has many committees that are specialized to look at issues and try to address them. And they're looking for people that have interest. If you're interested in the Parks Department, there's a place for you. And we're not just talking about volunteers, we're talking about boards. So can you just give us a quick snapshot of some of the ideas and how they would go about it if they're interested?
Mike, you're liaison to what?
Animal control.
Animal control. We have a advisory board. George, you're liaison to,
Economic
Parks.
development, the parks,
Yeah.
stormwater.
and we have boards for that. Charlie?
Airport board and the volunteer fire department boards.
We appoint people to the hospital board. We appoint to all kinds. As a matter of fact, I'm about to do an executive order in the next day or two regarding the 2020 census. Now, you wouldn't think here in 2018
Well.
that we would be talking about it, but that census is extremely important to make sure that we count everybody in this community. Number one, I want to make sure that we do have 100,000 people in Davis County. But a lot of the federal and state programs are based on the result of that census.
Right.
And even more so, even more important, you know, at one time we had 7 representatives in the House of Representatives. And back in the 90s, because we lost population, we lost one of those representatives.
difference.
It makes a difference in how you're represented in Washington. So it's extremely important. So I'm about to do an executive order forming a census, 2020 census board, and we will be looking for organizations more than individuals to serve on that board. But it's extremely important, and when we have had, we did an animal control ordinance, George, remember? And we had citizens advise us on that. We
I
did
think that was our starting point.
yeah, we did a property maintenance, redid our property maintenance, and we had a citizen advisory board. We don't want to be there and be the dictator as to what goes on in the community, and we know that there are many things that we won't take into consideration. And that's why it's important that we have all those folks out there helping us.
Well, let me, on behalf of OCTC, John Bryanton and the team here that helped produce this program, actually put it on technically. Obviously, we couldn't do it without them. And being here and being able to depend on them has been wonderful. They've been very creative in how we get questions in and then answered back to you. But a special thanks to Fiscal Court. This was their idea. They wanted to produce a show that would allow everyone that could either watch or watch on Facebook or here on Cable 71, an easy way to ask those questions that they just didn't have an answer to. And I want to thank you as a citizen for taking all these extra time. It's been a long day already. I'm sure some of you got some work to do still, but they came in at 6 o'clock every third Thursday or third Tuesday to be here. So I do want to thank you all. Especially want to thank Judy for letting us have Al and the rest of the crew here. But obviously we want to thank you. Without the viewers, we wouldn't have been here in the first place. Please be on the lookout on new ways that Fiscal Court will be able to answer your questions and get your input. Thank you, gentlemen, very much.
Thank you, Kirk.
Happy 47th anniversary, Judge.
And Kirk, just real quickly, without those citizens that are watching, we would not have been able to maintain our #1 rating in this time
That is
slot
right. We
all
go
these
out on
years.
top, don't we?
That's right.
Thank you all very much for viewing. We hope to see you in the future. Good night.